Good morning, book fans. Hope you're having a blessed Sunday. Today, guys, we've got a book review. And the book we're reviewing, Winter's Heart by Robert Jordan. Book 9 of The Wheel of Time. As you all are familiar with, if you haven't, check out my other Wheel of Time review videos I've done. I'm going to put that in the corner. But I am what you would call a slog sympathizer. I'm anti-slog. And if you're not familiar with the slog in Wheel of Time, a lot of fans of the series will say that around book 7 or 6, the story begins to bog down, and Robert Jordan really gets into the details, and some of the storylines start to slow down, and um, not much is happening in these middle section books of the series compared to like the first 5 or 6. And I myself have been an advocate for the slog, not because I don't think that there has been much of a slog. I would say that the slog starts with book 6 and then stops for book 7 and 8, and it does return in its sloggiest form for book 9. But yeah, so 7 and 8 I actually thought were paced pretty well, but Winter's Heart, he actually named the book Winter's Heart because the pacing is glacial. Now I'll just come out and say it. Did I like this book? Of course I like this book. I think one thing that Robert Jordan has in his corner, especially this late in the series, is he's been able to get us so invested in these characters that even when they are doing more mundane tasks or not having as intriguing plot threads, I'm still invested in like what they eat for breakfast. You can think of it as like a like your long running sitcoms like Friends and Seinfeld, those shows. It's you sort of you feel like you're living with these characters at this point once you get so far in, and so that's how I sort of felt in Winter's Heart with some of the slower sections. Is it slow? Yes, I think part of this is that a lot of the story threads for our characters in this story particularly are not as high vamped or interesting. So, for example, Perrin is his story in this book is trying to save or rescue his wife that's been captured by the Shido, who, yes, we are 9 books into the series and the Shido are still causing havoc. I mean, I thought they all got cut in half in that one and Doom as well. Anyways, and so a lot of this plot line, we you get the intrigue of first, like, okay, Vale's been kidnapped. I think that happened at the end of the Path of Daggers. So this book is really just, or I could be wrong. Maybe she gets kidnapped in this book. Either way, you get the kidnapping, and then we're really slowing down, and we get to hear Perrin every other line talk about how he misses his wife and he'll do anything to see his wife. Like Robert Jordan, you only had to say that once or twice for me to understand that Perrin missed his wife. You probably didn't even have to say it at all, because considering how Perrin speaks about Fail, especially earlier in the series, I would understand that he was probably upset. Again, with longer running series, though, you have to re-inform the audience of things because usually if you're reading as it's being released, there's a gap between release dates. But and then so we get the conclusion of the Perrin's arc, which is that the prophet has agreed to help him get his wife back, which I was like, okay, he's Taverin. I guess that's why. But again, we sort of have a pretty interesting beginning. We get a couple fail point of view chapters, but they're not too intriguing. Part of that is because Alejandre, I hope I'm saying that right, and Morghese, their character. Well, Alejandre is a newly introduced character, so I'm not too invested in what she has to say yet or her stance on things. And so those chapters were a little bit slow and boring for me personally. And then we get the end where he agrees to work with the dragon prophet Massima and to save his wife, and then he can take the prophet to meet Rand wherever. And of course, they can't travel because the prophet does not like magic. If you've been on the Wheel of Time subreddit, then the Elaine succession of the throne arc is referenced quite frequently for why these books are slogs. I actually sort of enjoyed these chapters a little bit, probably more than the average Wheel of Time fan, maybe. I listened to about a third of this book, more like half of this book on audiobook, so that helped a lot with like the pacing issues because I just turn it on while I drove and I'd listen, and it was interesting though to get back on topic to hear the politics of the world that are happening, and because this is a story that's always been had that political element to it, and so I found it was nice to sort of let's slow down fighting like the Forsaken and stuff, and let's talk about the politics of this world. Why Elaine is going to have trouble to try to take the crown of Andor, and I appreciate Robert Jordan for this because you could just say, "Oh, Rand put her on the throne; she's the queen now." But I mean, how realistic would that be, right? I mean, honestly, if the last queen had sort of disappeared or been killed, the new guy comes in, who's the evil guy who rules the world, and then he gives it to someone else. There's going to be a little contention there, which who actually deserves the throne. So, are those chapters slow though? Yes, and if you're not into the politics of the series, then those chapters are definitely going to be a bore because that's sort of the point of them is the politics behind it. In every Wheel of Time book, there's always the one main character, especially this late in the series, who just doesn't show up in the book. In Crown of Swords, it was Matt. In Winter's Heart, it's Egwene, or Egwene. I think we see her like once or twice in the Dream World, and that's it. So her story isn't really uh, applicable to this story. But hot take, all of the Matt stuff was like honestly kind of boring in this book. First off, we don't get a conclusion to his rescue arc that he's doing, trying to save the Aes Sedai that are captured by the Shan Shan and escape. What are they? Ebudar, trying to escape Ebudar from like the Shan Shan's grasp and find the Red Hand and regroup. All that was honestly kind of boring. I hate the Matt and Tylan relationship dynamic thing. It's so weird. Uh, so that wasn't doing much for me. I do like the idea. I guess one good functioning part of that relationship for the story is that he sort of has a time limit to where he has to complete his plan before she gets back and like puts the whip back around his neck or whatever. And she actually comes back early, which is a nice twist. But then like she just lets him go. She's like, okay, you can just go. Talvarian. I mean, that's crazy. She just lets him go. But anyways, all the math stuff wasn't too intriguing to me. We do get some Sean Chan point of views, but like I don't know, like Belle Doman, we haven't seen since Eye of the World, and these new Sean Chan characters were introduced in this book, so it's sort of hard for you as the reader to get invested in like what they're doing because it's we're 9 books into this series. I don't know who this guy is. I basically forgot who he was. And the Sean Chan lady that he's working with, it's like that was like 3 books ago, you know. So yeah, the Matt stuff was kind of boring too. But again, we all love Matt and we love his character. So, if George Costanza is off working a soup kitchen, like we're still going to watch because we love that guy. And that's, I guess you could say the same thing for Matt's arc here. Forgot to mention, but Matt does run into the Golem again, the like little slithery snake guy that's been trying to kill him. So that was sort of interesting. But then after the Golem sort of fails his assassination of Matt, we hear about him in passing of killing other people in Ebudar, but we don't really see him again. He doesn't really become a threat anymore. And one thing I did like about the Matt arc in this story is we were getting more of his progression to being like a reluctant hero, reluctant leader, like a good leader. Because if you took Matt from like book 1 or book 2 and told him that he had to rescue Aes Sedai from the Shan Shan, like he just wouldn't have done it. He probably would have ran away. So it is nice to see like through this storyline his growth as character. The Rand arc in this book was good as always. Always love the Rand. You guys know I'm a Rand fanboy though, but so Rand is in far matting, tracking down the Ashaman who've betrayed him. Um, and again, we get to see one of Robert Jordan's strengths through Rand's point of view chapters, and that's every city in this world feels unique, feels like its own city, and we have a whole continent of cities we're working with in the Wheel of Time, and so it is a testament to Jordan's capabilities as a writer to make all of these towns and cities feel different from the next one. So like Camelin feels different than Caerhine does, and Caerhine feels different than Tyr, than Ilion. They all feel like they have their own unique culture, and that's something that I love. And it's nice to it really immerses you into this world because it feels real, right? You know, if you went across America to the West Coast, it's obviously the culture there is going to be much different than what it's like on the East Coast. And he captures that idea really well. So, for example, here in Far Madding has had two proclaimed false dragons who have tried to take over the world. So, of course, this town is like super focused on not using the power, like eliminating the power. They have a huge terangrial that they can use that will literally tell them when someone's using the power. And also, the town is set on this like what are those people called again? The big furry ones, not Trollocs. Loyal's people. Uh, they sort of have like these steadings where you can't touch the power, any of the power, the male or the female source. And so this town's built on one of those, like on this like little island. And so the history there is just super rich, and it shows in how the city is portrayed. Like for example, the women sort of take the lead of like economic issues and political issues, stuff like that, because the men in the past have been terrible people who've got armies together to try to take over the world because they think they're the dragon because they can channel. And so that means women now have the lead. And that's sort of interesting point there too that just bleeds through the pages of just great world building from Robert Jordan. But Rand specifically, the sort of climax of his story arc in this installment is he removes the filth or the taint on the male half of the true source, true power of the magic in this world. So now men can channel, use that magic, and not go crazy or go mad, which has massive implications on this world now. Because to this point in the story, a male channeler is as bad as like the boogeyman, because it's like, oh gosh, he can throw fireballs and he's probably gonna go crazy in a year and a half, or maybe probably less, like a rabid dog. But now that that's not an issue, it'll be interesting to see how that affects the world going on from now. So, one more thing about Rand, we have a super important interaction here when Rand talks to Alana, who Alana is the Aes Sedai who forcibly bonded herself to him, which is seen as like a huge crime. Like it's totally messed up in the world, and rightfully so. She basically just can watch him feel his emotions whenever she wants now against his will without his consent. And she sort of walks in and he's talking to her and she's like, yeah, I'll help you. I'll help you with your cause. Just tell me what to do. I'm like, these top Aaron, man. It's too easy for him. First we got Perrin getting the prophet just to work with him, then Matt with the Sean Chan, and it's crazy. Oh, and I forgot to mention this about Matt. We get to see the daughter of the Nine Moons, who's the woman he's prophesized to marry, and so not much is going on there. We sort of see her stalking him, kind of following him where he goes, and then by the end of the book, when they capture her, he like proclaims that like she's his wife. So uh, maybe expecting more from that plot line, but I think it'll still handle decently well. Overall, like I mentioned earlier in this video, I did like Winter's Heart. I would probably rank it just above The Eye of the World, though. So it's probably my second least favorite Wheel of Time book that I've read so far. I want to chalk this up to we get introduced to characters who we don't have much stakes in, right? So we get a lot of Shan Chan point of views, and first off, the Shan Chan are just terrible people. I mean, they have slaves, they leash women channelers, and like they are improving the economy though, but they're just not good people. And we do get the point of view from some Shan Chan that are like reforming and trying to become better people, which gives them a little bit of the benefit of the doubt. But still, they're this newly introduced character from this culture that's kind of terrible, so hard to get invested with them, and that sort of maybe tarnishes the Matt plotline a little bit. And then again, we don't have the super exciting high action arcs that we did from previous books that of course, as a dude, I always love. We don't have the Rand holding Kalendor fighting the Shan Chan. He does clear the taint on the source by the end of the book. But and again, we don't have anyone trying to steal the Horn of Valor, or we don't have Doom Eyes Wells. We do sort of have like a semi face down with the Forsaken at the end of the book, but I don't believe any of the Forsaken. No, one Forsaken does die, because it's revealed that Dashava was a Forsaken. That plot point was spoiled for me though, so maybe that also hurt my reading of this of Winter's Heart. But again, a lot of characters we don't have stakes in, a lot of slowing down of what we're doing. We're really getting settled into the world here. Not much grand scale things happening except for Rand, and I think that's why this book is pretty sloggy and one of the lesser favorites of the series. And but like I mentioned before, we've been with the characters that we have been, and do get the point of view chapters that we've been with a long time and have built that connection to. Those still make it an interesting read because we love those characters. Editor Bookman here. One additional clip that I wanted to add to talk about Winter's Hearts. I feel like the quality of writing sort of dips a little bit in this book. I swear, in one of the map point of view chapters, like a woman character comes on the scene and it's like she walked and her boobs boobed boobily, and I'm like, oh wow, that's like so stuff like that. Sort of description will come up and I roll my eyes like we do every time Nynaeve pulls her braid or stuff like that. Um, Maybe you could argue that he describes it that way because it's from Matt's point of view, and he sort of has like that pervy eye on him, I guess. Um, Still throws me off though. Also, some of the like prose work in this in Winter's Heart flows like a rock, almost like sort of Hemingway esque, where it's like just like I don't know the sometimes and the choice of words like he had like having to use had twice in a sentence, and they just or like the repetition of certain similes or analogies, just I don't know. I think the writing wasn't like up to par as it was in some of the other books, and so maybe that also makes this book you know lesser in the series or more of a slog to get through. So that was one thing I did want to bring up and mention, but I don't think the writing was completely terrible, just like a little bit worse than it usually is. That'll be it for the Winter's Heart review. Thank you all for watching. Hopefully, I'll read Crossroads of Twilight sometime soon. We'll get that review out and I can finish this series, try to get through the slog. But thank you all for watching, and we'll see you next Sunday.